Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. This is our next episode of SG Insights. For those who have never kind of seen one of these before, SG Insights is a conversational series where we, as a group in Seneca Global, try to explore how emerging technologies, typically Gen AI, and how they're being applied to real world business challenges. And we want to go beyond the hype and all the buzzwords and share some of the lessons and the frameworks and firsthand perspectives that our teams are gathering as they really implement these solutions at the ground floor with our clients. So we hope we could bring some value here to the larger public. But today, what we're really focusing on is what it takes to move Gen AI from a good idea or a theoretical idea to actual business value. Jerry and I were actually on a call just yesterday where they were really focusing on, okay, proof of concept is one thing, but we need to get to real value, real functional value quickly so that we can keep exploring projects like this. And I think from my perspective, at least, we've seen a lot of discussion around Gen AI and a lot of hype and a lot of board leaders and senior leadership saying, hey, we need to take advantage of this. But it's easy to talk yourself into a corner before actually doing something. So what we wanted to do here today is take a real world example that we actually did on behalf of one of our clients and share some of the lessons that we learned and how to find the functionality out of that, what the business what the business outcome was for that, and really how you can apply that thinking, that methodology to drive some of these things a little bit faster, so you're not spending so long on theory and you can really start making actionable choices. So with that, I'll do a couple of introductions for those who don't know us. My name is Zach Szofer. I'm the Director of Strategic Business Development here at Seneca Global. I'm very well connected to all of our clients and all of our prospects, so I have a good sense of what people are focusing on and what emerging technologies truly are bringing the most dollars and the most value and the most attention, so that we can, as a firm, as a software development firm, bring that value to our clients and our prospects. Dennis, why don't I pass to you?
Sure. Dennis Spada. I'm EVP of Seneca Global, so I'm probably the least qualified to be an AI expert, but definitely talk to a lot of clients and customers on what their goals are and what the future of AI looks like as everyone is getting started at this early stage.
Thanks, Dennis. Jerry?
Jerry Thomas, VP of Technology. I try to keep my pulse on the technology and what's going on in the AI world as of today.
And Chandra?
Chandra Chawkla here, with as a technical manager, interfacing with the client as well as working with the offshore team on the technology aspects. Yep.
Great. So why we gathered this group here is me and Dennis, we speak to most of the clients at a business level, trying to find the value so we can actually start lining up projects. Jerry's the guy who's guiding the specific AI methodologies for our firm as a whole and also helping our clients determine just what is a good first step. And Chandra, we've included you because you were really boots on the ground in this specific implementation of a Gen AI solution that's brought a lot of value for our client here. So why don't we start by just kind of describing the client itself and the project at a very high level. So this is for a compliance software company. They've been a client of Seneca Global's for some time, and really this is a company that's had a lot of iterations. They were a fairly analog company 25 years ago, and they've become increasingly tech-centric ever since. And when we first came on board within the last year and change, we noticed a lot of tech debt and a lot of areas, room for growth for our solutions, not only for our software development expertise, but some of these new emerging technologies to improve some of the pain points in their business. And specifically to this conversation, one of those was on data extraction and taking data from multiple sources of varying degrees of quality, not properly mapped, not neatly organized, and turning that into and being able to map that properly into the client software. So Chandra, could you spend just a couple of minutes describing what that data extraction process looked like before we got our hands on it?
Okay. So when we involved in this activity, and when we understood the existing product, how it is currently doing, they do have a existing low-code, no-code solution to extract the data from the public websites and process that data and places them in the persistent storage devices. And the problem that we have encountered at that time is some of these public sites, when they are extracted, they have large volume of content in a PDF format. And this data is in paragraph format in those PDF files. And we need to extract specific fields from those paragraphs to extract the data because they are all summarized in the paragraph, but we need to extract the specific elements from that paragraph. So the existing solution was there, but it was not correct as well as complete. It has correctness around 50% itself, but it was not monitored. So it was no one noticed that it is extracting only 50% of the data. So that's when we started looking at, we found that a good amount of data is not getting extracted, and also we found issues with respect to the completeness as well. Like though it is extracting, it is not extracting to the complete paragraph all the elements that are essential. So that's when we found that, and since it's a very huge paragraph size of PDFs, it is not manually scalable to extract that using the existing code as well as the solution that it is employed. So we need to have a much more scalable solution. That's where we started looking in applying the LLM as a solution in this kind of approach. So in this particular problem statement.
Great. So that's a great place to pause there. So we saw an existing process. It was less than ideal, 50% success rate. Even among that 50%, the completeness wasn't always there. I seem to remember that there was some challenges in processing time as well. Yep. So it took quite a bit of time to process even that 50%, but it was still the best that they had. And the rest had to be handled manually or just get missed altogether. And that's a lot of value missed for the business as well as their clients. And I like to think that this is this specific case study is specific to this client. However, data extraction and leveraging data is a challenge that we could see across all sorts of industries, right, Jerry? I mean, we've come across it in several conversations with existing clients, with prospects, with people out in the wild. When do we start to identify whether a problem or whether a challenge, a business challenge around data should be a good candidate for an LLM implementation or a more traditional software development approach or an off-the-shelf product? Do you have any kind of markers or telling signals that, hey, this is a good point for us to start using AI?
So generally speaking, structured data is easy to process. I mean, once you have structured data, you know what columns or attributes are there. It's pretty much easy to process that and implement a solution around it. It's when the data is unstructured that it becomes problematic and probably much more ideal for LLM-based solutions. And the solution depends on the type of data. So for example, if you had data, unstructured data, where you are extracting information like names from a website or a PDF document, and you needed to convert that into a fixed structure as in last name first name, honorifics, and things like that. You want to break down those essential information out of it. You can potentially utilize BERT transformers or other kinds of transformers, but the accuracy goes down when it's a mixed bag. I mean, some places it's first name first, some places it's last name first, some places there are other attributes that are there. So LLMs do a much better job of inferring this attribute information, extracting that attributes out of it and breaking it down into a structured structured approach output, right?
Well, right, and
there are
what you're
cases.
describing, sorry to interrupt, but what you're describing around transformers and potential workarounds, that doesn't even apply when you're talking about nicknames or
Exactly.
typos or complete misspellings of names,
Yeah.
where even the slickest of logic trees can't necessarily navigate human error on that side, right?
Exactly. And it's not always necessary to put the entire data as is to an LLM to extract the information out. You could do some pre-processing and pass the information after pre-processing to an LLM. So to extract information like nicknames, designations, doctorate, honorifics, all of these things becomes a lot more challenging when you're trying to do it using a transformer or a logic-based approach. Whereas LLMs make it slightly simpler. I mean, you just supply the information, ask them, give it a prompt, and give it a structure to return the answer in, and you almost, I mean, you have a higher probability of getting the results right.
So to kind of boil it down, or really to come up to a higher level, we're talking specifically about name extraction as an example here.
As
But
an
the
example
general
here,
lesson
yes.
is that LLM models are just better at handling unstructured data, period, correct?
Yeah, unstructured data, not just unstructured data which may have a language construct or a conversational construct where you potentially want to extract information based on the semantics, not just based on what data attributes are there. I mean, it's not just regex, it's extracting information, who said what, or who was the other party involved, what are the parties involved, is there a organization involved, is there a individual involved, stuff like that. So depending on the data that you want to extract, you can use it to do other stuff also. I mean, extract broader information out of a particular content, or summarizing a big block of text into a shorter, meaningful, insightful information as well. So you could use it for transformations as well, not just for data extraction. There are different use cases, but you typically it makes more sense to utilize LLM models for unstructured data rather than structured data. There are use cases for structured data as well, which we can probably discuss later.
Sure. Okay, so that's a good overview of when to maybe think about LLMs. So Chandra, let's kind of finish up with the case study itself and describe very quickly or at a high level what the solution we implemented was, and then we can kind of back up and look at how those lessons can apply to a broader client set or business use case.
Okay. In our case, like the client, when we brought up this point that we can leverage, we had done our groundwork in terms of using the models, and we found that the models LLMs will definitely solve this particular problem that we are looking at. And client has encouraged us in getting the model hosted in their local, in the Azure AI Foundry. And we were accessing that API, that model through the API endpoints, and then that's when we found that the model that is been deployed is useful for us, and then it is actually performing much better than what we did in our local environment because of the higher resource infrastructural capacity that is provided, and a lot of advantage that we found, like it is pulling out all the required information, and then based upon again. We had to work on multiple cycles to improve the prompt, because this is textual data which we need to extract the specific fields from that textual data. So we had to run in multiple cycles to pull the required fields. And also in some places we had to summarize the data also, considering certain information. We also need to pull out the summary of the content, because some of the paragraphs might be multiple lines, right? But we cannot accommodate all that. So we had to summarize that information. So that even this LLM has helped us over there. And in some cases, we had to categorize the data. Like, for example, we need to identify whether a particular name it belongs to an individual person's name or it is an organization or an entity name. So even to classify this particular data, we were able to use the LLM where it was clearly able to categorize whether it is an individual or an entity. So that was really very helpful. Otherwise, manually doing that activity would be to go with some keyword-based assumptions that this name could be if it has an LLC or let's say a center or a shop kind of thing, then it is an entity. Otherwise, it is an individual name. So a lot of hard-coded way of differentiating the individual name and entity was there earlier, but with the LLM, it was much more accurate, and we do not need to maintain all the hard-coded stuff to do this recognition. And there is another benefit that we also found is splitting the names. In some cases, we used to have we need to extract the aliases. In some cases, the person name also has the aliases where we need to extract the alias names properly. We got that through the LLM. And finally, the date formats. The formatting of the data, especially with respect to dates, was not correct in the source information. So we had to make it a consistent format. So there also this large language model has helped in getting that one. So it was really very useful for us.
Great. So what was the end result here? Here's the flashy. Oh, here's where we went from. We started at 50% accuracy with the non-LLM based support, 35 minutes processing time per document on average, a lot of manual review required, and pretty low adaptability to data changes like you're just describing. Where do we end up after we implemented this LLM based software solution?
For us, I cannot say it is 100% accurate, but at least we are at 98 to 99% accurate, because we still need to run through our data validation cycles to ensure that what is that 1% missing, what are the edge cases, or do we need to improve the prompt in certain scenarios, because the data gets evolved over a period of time. There are multiple different permutations and combinations of the data. So we still need to be watchful. We cannot directly assume that whatever the LLM is providing is 100% accurate. We need to run through the data validation cycles yet. But the amount of effort that we have to spend to ensure that it is correct is far less. So almost it is like a 50% manual effort to almost a 2% manual effort.
Right. So we're going from 50% accuracy to 98 or 99% accuracy. You're going from a 50% manual effort to 2% manual effort. And I believe I saw in the processing time, we're going from 35 minutes to 5 minutes or less. So you're talking about an 85% reduction in processing time. So pretty much a win across the board here. Now, that's a good case study, right? That's a good use case for us to say, hey, you should be exploring these solutions for any sort of data extraction by itself. There's a million use cases for AI, right? And that's kind of where everyone's struggling right now, is where do we start? But data extraction just seems kind of like a no-brainer. Now, I'm sure there's exceptions, but this was a pretty solid result for our client in the end. So obviously pretty pleased with that result. Now, backing up from this case study specifically, and this was probably more of a question for Dennis at this point, is, we see that there's value for GenAI within the software development lifecycle, whether it be a purely GenAI product that you're building on behalf of a client or just embedding it into an existing process. So when do we see clients or prospects who are eager and excited to use GenAI versus a little bit hesitant, and how can we help them navigate, or what can we tell them in terms of getting your toes wet versus diving in head first? What are some business problems that signal a good fit for GenAI, or at least exploring it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really common conversation that we're having with a lot of our clients. Is just that, is like, what do we do? How do we get started? I think to kind of tag on to the previous conversation with Jerry and Chandra, the idea of unstructured data and areas where you have, tons of content that you need to wrangle, essentially, right? A good example, we've got a client that we essentially have taken both structured and unstructured data and applied that to an LLM-based chatbot that allows essentially users to walk through a system. It provides, clear path to any type of functionality through that system. It's very intuitive, very easy to use. We've all seen AI chatbots in almost every software platform now and every website that we go to. But to be able to kind of point that unstructured data, which is, multiple, Word documents that have, either training manuals or functional designs, and then also point that to the database and allow the chatbot to, talk to users through what their personal user persona has the capability to do, not just everything within the system. So that's where the intelligence comes in, is that you get some really focused input based on pointing to a larger number of data sources. So that's one of the easier sells that we have in terms of telling the story and a quick win for a lot of our clients.
Yeah, that's a good point. The question is, in a pre-LLM world, how would you have taken advantage of the same set of data? What would the process have been? Would it have just been, hey, hire a couple of people who know the documents back and forth and keep them on the phone and get ready for, raising the alarm when someone has a customer request? Or do you build some really complex script for an automated chatbot to handle? Both of those situations are costly and time inefficient and probably less accurate than the LLM is in the end anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to anticipate every question, every keyword out of every question, and create some sort of logic structure that hopefully gets you close to the right answer. And we've also seen that using chats where you ask them a question, you say, what color is the sky? And it says hammer, right? You just get something that's a complete hallucination.
Yeah.
The good old days, right?
Sure. So do we have any examples so far of where we've seen either our clients or even our own teams maybe reaching a little bit too far too fast with AI? And this is for the general group. We see a lot of trepidation with some of our clients, especially those that deal with more sensitive data sets in healthcare or in the finance industry. So where's the merit to that fearfulness, right? Where do we have to make sure that we're setting up the proper guardrails to implement these solutions without setting something up that is going to either hallucinate a lot or be insecure? And this might be a whole separate topic, so if we want to maybe table some of that, that's fine. But maybe this is kind of a Jerry question of how do we alleviate that tension with our clients? How do we make sure that we're setting up the proper guardrails at a high level? And are there examples of, well, actually, yeah, if you set it and forget it, here's what happens, and here's the horror story, right?
I mean, we don't have any horror stories because everybody is a little bit conservative. I mean, nobody's jumping off the bridge and diving directly into the water. Everybody is experimenting. I mean, I've seen people experiment and they have run into some problems. So I've seen people who have experimented utilizing AI generated code generators to build out a solution, and then it goes to a certain extent, is able to do it. And suddenly one prompt and it wipes everything out. So you have to be really careful. I mean, they were successful up to a point. The thing that I would say is start small and build on top of it. The reason I say that is if you start small, it's very easy for the LLM to produce an output when you have specific clear instructions. And as you build on top of it, make sure that you commit on a frequent basis so that you don't lose the data. It's the same approach that we would take with a junior developer. I mean, any junior developer, when you give him some instructions, you don't give him the entire solution. You provide him a certain subset with clear instructions so that they can build something, and then you say, enhance this, add this feature, or add this feature. That approach works a lot better with LLMs rather than giving them a a very, very high level requirement and just run with it. It can run with it in the wrong direction, and you'll be out of what you basically can mess up what you had started with. You have to be a little bit careful here and there. So, as I said, no horror stories yet. So good thing to know that people are trying it out, and I have heard different mixed bag of results in terms of how they have used it, what roadblocks they have hit, and how they're approaching it.
Well, I think maybe that's the lesson, right? Is utilize an individual or a partner who knows to be conservative, who knows to what baby steps to take to ensure the sanctity and the longevity of the solution that you're building in the first place. Because I've heard a horror story outside of our business of a friend who's in a startup, and they're a startup, they don't have a lot of funds, and they don't have the means to employ a large, sophisticated software development team. So they're hiring kids that are actively in undergrad, learning their computer science degree. And they say, hey, rewrite our application. AI makes it easy, right? And then they call a friend of mine who's their head of product. He's getting calls in the middle of the night. Hey, it's broken. It's not working. It's giving me all the wrong information. What's wrong? And he looks at it. He says, well, this code was not written by a person, and it wasn't even babysat by a person, right? So you have to temper the expectations, right? You can't just say, you can't just tell ChatGPT basic, hey, write me a program that extracts all this data and maps it into this process. There's a lot of steps and a lot of acumen on the software development side, and a lot of real world experience that goes into building, maintaining, and evaluating these solutions as they go into production, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, go ahead, Chandra.
And we have seen that multiple cycles, as Jerry has mentioned, right? Like we started, one of the aspects that we need to ensure in order to get more confidence in the data that it is getting is what are the validation steps that we need to cross-check when it provides certain data, like how do we ensure that it is correct? So we have to be better prepared on that. And we need to have those checklist items and multiple cycles. It's not that in one cycle we'll get the entire information in the right way. So we have to first ensure that we get the first basic, like it's again on the prompt side, how we build the prompt, the level of information that we supply in the prompt. The same way we have to ensure that the validation side also, we have to ensure that the validation cycles also goes through in every output that the LLM is providing to us.
Got it. And one more question for you, Chandra, back to the specific use case. And I think this will be interesting for business leaders to hear is, what was the timeline like of our proposal of an LLM-based solution, our POC, implementation, and production? How long, roughly, ballpark, did it take for us to get from concept to launch, to actually start providing some value? Because I think that in my conversations is some of the things that people are really excited about. Whereas before, when you would say, oh, well, we could build a software solution for you, let's go hire a team, let's map it out, and let's develop it, and 6 months later maybe you'll have something. What was kind of the time to implement this particular project?
In our case, it actually went in we started with one of the public source where we are extracting the data, which was fairly simple. When we started with, we don't want to go with a complicated one. We started with a simple one, whether it is actually solving our problem or not. So it was a POC kind of thing. So it was maybe around 10 to 15 days. We were able to see that, okay, it is working fine. And with all the different combinations of problems that we are facing, it is trying to address. So that's the kind of POC activity we did. And then after we got the confidence on it, then we have taken up a larger and much more complicated data source, which has different variations of problems inside it. So that we said that, okay, this is the case study kind of thing which we can consider to ensure that we can solve any kind of problem. So that we got into at least 2 months to ensure that all the cycles went in and the data is perfect. Where we started from 50% accuracy to 98% accuracy, in order to complete all the cycles, at least we took it 2 months to get that one. But that actually helped us in ensuring that all the different problems that are there can be addressed.
Okay, so I mean, you're talking about POC in 2 weeks or less, and full-blown implementation of a pretty significant cost and time-reducing activity in roughly 2 months. Jerry, take a ballpark what that would have taken without an LLM-based solution to see those kind of results in terms of time.
I mean, the kind of challenges that you would face with the variety of problems or variety of combinations of the data, that itself would take a lot of time. I mean, more at least a couple of months just to do the POC itself. So with LLM, it becomes quite easy to experiment. I mean, you just have to change the prompt and you get a different result. And you can experiment with multiple prompts. So the POC part itself would be pretty simple to do, but the validation is where I think Chandra and team had to spend a lot of time. So your result or the POC of sending a message or a data set to LLM and getting a response back would have been pretty quick to implement. But ensuring that the data is accurate and it covers all the possible scenarios, that requires you to collect data from multiple sources, multiple combinations, generate that kind of information and share it with the LLM and get the result, and then manually verify. That's what takes the longer period of time. So the code or the development piece is typically pretty small, and it's easy to change the prompt and change the payload. But ensuring that you have you have covered all your bases, all the corner edge cases, all the things that are potentially going wrong with your existing system, and testing and verifying those things, that obviously takes time. It's a matter of data collection. It's a matter of there's a lot of activity involved. You could potentially work on it by again using LLM to generate data in a variety of ways to achieve faster speed in terms of validation as well. The challenge is sometimes when we are looking at expectations from a client side, the expectations can potentially be very high. And if you don't achieve it on the first go, they might abandon that particular project because of the higher expectations. So you have to be careful about the expectations. Setting the right expectations is important, ensuring that people understand what are the complexities involved. It's not just about the AI, it's about the data, it's about the variety of data, the combinations that are involved. I mean, you have to ensure that things work perfectly. It's not just one data set I give it and it's giving me the right result. I cannot say it's working perfectly. So those are the changes, or those are the kind of things that people have to understand. And it's our job to ensure that they understand all the nitty-gritties involved and not just hype that, oh, LLM can do your job in 5 minutes.
What you described, the metaphor that pops in my head is, let's say you get a fancy new robot that can build a car in 10 minutes. Okay, great. It popped out a car. It looks good. Do you put a family of 5 in it right away? Or do you maybe test it out a little bit and make sure it doesn't catch fire half a mile down the road, right? Dennis, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I think, Jerry, you touched on, data hygiene, which is critical in all business systems, right? But, when we talk about Gen AI models, what have you seen in terms of, ongoing and evolving methods to continue to improve data hygiene? Because to me, it sounds like that's really the second evolution of your system is, okay, we've got the functionality of the system. Now, what processes are we putting in place to continue to further the data hygiene so you don't get the age-old cliche of garbage in, garbage out?
There are a lot of methods that I have seen people use, or at least theoretically talk about using. There are methods that involve utilizing multiple LLMs to do computation and analysis of the result. So as Chandra was mentioning, there's an LLM model that has been used to extract information from a particular paragraph and convert it into a structured format. Now you could use a separate reviewer, a different LLM model to say, this is the input, this is the output. Tell me if it is right or identify what are the possible mistakes that it has made. And you could do this, or you could take it further. Instead of sending the data to just one model, you could send it to multiple models and evaluate and combine the data from across multiple models. You could have one model doing very good at names, one model being very good at something else, and then you combine the data together to formulate what is the output. So it's a starting point. I mean, given the starting point, you can go further and further, and you can enhance the system in such a way that you get more and more better at the data that is there. Coming to the data hygiene perspective, I mean, you would have to again create an LLM model or provide the prompts to say this is the information that we have, identify potential discrepancies in this data or anomalous behavior, and extract that. There are machine learning models and algorithms that are defined to identify anomalies and issues with data. You could take it one step further by utilizing LLMs to infer or evaluate data and provide insights into what's potentially wrong, what are the things that you have to look into, and take the next step on what we need to do to clean or fix the data.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's a good point there, Jerry. So I think this has been a good conversation. I want to start wrapping up here, but I wanted to ask each of you from this discussion, what's one lesson or mindset shift that you'd want the audience or a potential client to take away? Dennis and I are having real world conversations regularly of, hey, here's a great use case that just shows some of the potential value of Gen AI. And it's a pretty specific use case, right? Like I said at the top, there's a million things you could do with Gen AI. This is really, this one, though, I think is pretty broadly applicable to a lot of different industries and verticals, just because data is king. And that's been true for some time. And being able to leverage that data and in a way that is cost effective, whether it's critical to your business or you're just you're tapping into unrealized potential or value, utilizing these types of models and solutions can really accelerate your usage of that data. What's one lesson, Chandra? I'll start with you. What's one lesson or takeaway that you would maybe want any client, or at least most clients, to consider as they're starting to go down the path of Gen AI and maybe are a little gun shy about it, or maybe don't know where to start?
At least I would like to say that, okay, have a fast fall feedback loops from the ideation to POC to MVP to present it or to incubate it. We can leverage LLMs to start, because ideas can come up, and we can use these LLM models to immediately convert those ideas into POCs and then come up with an MEPs. So that's where I would see, because earlier, in order to convert an idea into a concrete implementation, it used to take a long cycles. But now we can leverage these LLMs to get that in a shorter period. That's one thing that I would like to see.
Yeah, I mean, not to expand on it too much, but this is a client who's eager to use AI, right? And was very open to it, and we didn't really have to convince them too much to at least explore it, and start experimenting. So I think that's a great lesson, is be open to experimentation, give your teams and your partners the room to experiment, and review it quickly and often, so that you can find the real value sooner rather than later, rather than discussing and philosophizing around AI. Just start messing around with it. Start finding some pain points in your business and see what your teams might be able to come up with. Give them the leg room within reason. Don't launch things into production before they're reviewed, but give your teams the room to play.
Exactly. And I also want to extend that to be very careful on a couple of points, especially with the learnings that we got through this experiment in this particular journey, is we have to be extra careful in terms of validating the data because of the hallucination, especially when we ask for summarizing the data, it actually overblown the actual content, and then it has actually given overwhelming information which is not relevant over there. So we have to ensure that we contain what is actually needed for us in the from a purpose point of view. We need to ensure that the hallucination is reduced for the context, and also we need to be very much careful about the token limits. Especially from a technology point of view, we need to ensure that there is a limitations that need to be considered. We cannot give the entire content and get that all analyzed in a single go. And also we need to ensure that the prompt, how are we building the prompt is also very careful, because over a period of time the prompt can go overboard, where we are doing analysis paralysis kind of thing, where we are giving too much information and then it actually limits what we are actually getting. So the direction in which we are increasing the prompt maturity is very much important for us to ensure that we are getting the right results. Otherwise it might get into a very complex, or the prompt itself can limit us what we are getting back.
Yeah, that illuminates a micro lesson that I've heard in the past, that I think it was some major retailer had implemented an AI chatbot, and some malicious user asked it to recite the entire works of Shakespeare, or, hey, okay, can you please calculate pi to the 10 decatillionth degree? And then it's just running and running and running and running and costing God knows how much in terms of the token. So you need to put the bounds on it so that malicious users or even mistaken users don't accidentally spiral costs. That's a good one. Jerry, how about you? Any one lesson or shift that you might want our audience to kind of take away from this?
Well, setting the right expectations is what I would say. Having the right expectations means that you won't be disappointed upfront. If you have too high expectations and the first attempt fails, you might get disappointed and not try it. So having the right set of expectations and ensuring that you are verifying the results well is important, and that paves the way to success. I mean, if you are successful in a small piece, keeping the solution space small, and you're able to achieve that within that particular boundary, you can expand it and you can add more to it. But keeping it small, keeping it reasonable, having the right set of expectations is what I would say goes a long way.
I would agree with that. And Dennis, how about you? You're on mute. Oh,
sorry about that. I'm new with Teams. No, I think kind of to tag on to what Jerry said in terms of setting expectations. I think there's always a conversation that needs to be had around whether you want to call it best practices or preferred approach or context, right? You're not always going to 100% replace human interaction. So there's certain scenarios where you need to have the right understanding there. We already talked about data hygiene, which could affect the quality or the level of hallucination. And I think previously, Zach, I think you also mentioned at the beginning of this, guardrails, right? There definitely needs to be, those guardrails essentially set the context for how you would approach, an implementation leveraging Gen AI. I think the other thing that needs to be considered that helps with the perception is what are your essentially your KPIs or your metrics coming out of it. So we should really have a conversation around, what do we expect to gain here? What do we expect? Is it reduced time for a certain task? Is it reduced cost for a certain task? Or, is this AI model doing the task better than the previous process? That's also a possibility that needs to be considered. So, just the whole idea of going into it with some context and some expectations to what Jerry's point was, and then really understanding how to measure it. Because at the end of the day, you're looking for efficiencies in your business. You're looking for something that's going to hit the bottom line. And that's really what's going to help you sell it in the boardroom as well.
Agreed. All right. Well, that I think those are all good lessons that anyone can take away from this. So thanks, guys. This has been a great conversation. One last thing I like to do at the end of these sessions is ask each person what's one personal use of AI that you've used in the last week or so. What's completely outside of business or business value? Is there any place you've kind of asked ChatGPT for a very specific thing? I'll start. Just yesterday, I was asking it to help me figure out how to cram 3 different sized car seats by different manufacturers into my mid-sized SUV rear row, because it is not easy when you just look at the thing. And it gave me some good tips. I still was sweating and swearing a little bit, but it at least got me off on some sort of foot. How about you, Jerry? Any personal use case recently with
there are so many. I mean, it's like a personal assistant. I like to use it for any kind of brainstorming. Whenever I have some free time, I would just talk to it. I mean, it's pretty good at discussions, and it's pretty good at a lot of other things. We recently got ChatGPT to generate a small video based on a picture that we had. I mean, even the step to, we had a English language text in one image, video. So we got one English language, converted it into Spanish using ChatGPT for the image, then use the base image to generate a video out of it, a short 10-second video. Well, it was interesting. I mean, it's just how you think about things now that there is LLM models available. So just thinking about alternative ways to approach the same thing instead of trying to do everything manually is an interesting option.
How about you, Chandra? Any personal uses recently that you want to share?
Yeah, one of the silly aspect is like when myself and my wife have a conversation and we ended up in 2 different decisions, then we take ChatGPT's version. What is it?
That's a good one.
That's dangerous.
The mediator.
Wow.
The mediator.
Yeah. Wow.
You've got to train a model to always lean towards your side of things and make it sound objective. There you go.
It depends on whose mobile we are using to generate the chat prompt.
There you go. Dennis, how about you?
I'll give you 2 quick examples. One is we recently got a real estate tax bill, so we spent quite a bit of time on there just refining the process to protest a real estate tax bill. And there's I understood the concept from doing it in the past, but learned a few things from it, and that's what you can hope for, right? Is to always learn something new. And then kind of on the nerdy side, I actually use it to help study and train strategy around playing backgammon. I'm an avid backgammon player, so I have a lot of backgammon conversations with different AI models. That's the other thing I'll say is, personally, I use, I'm sure everyone here is the same way, but I think I use 5 or 6 different AI models, some of them just out of habit, some of them to retain certain conversations, and then others just because, I have, like Jerry said, pitted them against each other to see what kind of outcome you get. And it's been very helpful.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, guys. This has been a great conversation. I'm sure we'll get some value out of it for the viewers, and we'll all talk again soon as we continue to have more and more of these successful case studies. Thanks for taking the time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.